Let's not meet. Caught a man breaking into my house whilst I was in the house. This was about 6 years ago. I was in my mid-20s. I lived with my sister and her boyfriend at the time. Their bedroom was next to mine, near the front door. I was in my bedroom on my laptop, watching movies. It was early afternoon and I had my dogs in the bedroom with me. They are medium to large dogs, mixed working breeds. I heard the door creak as though it had opened, but didn't think much of it as I often leave it unlocked and thought the wind, non-existent wind, had blown it open. I continued to watch my movie shows and my dogs were insistent that someone was in the house. They were incessantly sniffing at the crack between floor and door. I ignored them for another few minutes before deciding I should get up and check. I opened the door and my dogs ran straight out from my bedroom into my sister's. I followed them, thinking maybe one of them, sister or BF, had come home. I saw an unknown man in his 50s, maybe 6 feet, regular build, standing at my sister's cupboard. My dogs were sniffing him all over. I continued to stare. In the back of my mind I did consider he was robbing us, but I pushed that aside and tried to think how I may know him. My dogs at that point knew something was up and they both left him and stood beside me, one on either side, overly focused on the man. One dog, who is deaf so doesn't growl, was in his ready position, head down but neck stretched out, tail straight out. Every step I took, they took with me, not moving an inch away from me. Eventually he said I'm in the wrong house. I didn't steal anything. I asked him to leave then and he offered for me to check his bag, insisting he hadn't stolen anything. I checked his bag and I asked him to show me his pockets. He patted them down and pulled them out as far as they go. I said he could leave and even said goodbye. I kind of felt sorry for him at that point. Anyway, I called some friends because I thought the situation was somewhat exciting. They didn't see it that way and suggested I call the police. I followed their advice and when taking my statement, they told me the same guy broke into 2 houses earlier and when they caught him, he became aggressive and said he had a knife and ran at them. They also said he stole a laptop, which was in his bag when I checked it. I felt bad I didn't get it back for them. I am certain the only reason I had such a polite interaction with him was because I had my dogs with me. It was the only difference between me and the other 2 people. One of the others was female too. So, man who broke into my house, I hope we don't meet again. Well, maybe not in those circumstances. I do think he was just a guy down on his luck. He has a bunch of previous charges, including assault, but who knows his situation. The weirdo at McDonald's, aka the day I lost some of my innocence. When I was growing up, my dad and I lived with my grandparents. My parents had me while they were teenagers and my dad got full custody because he lived with my grandparents and my mom was just living with random friends, going from house to house every few weeks. I was the daughter my grandparents never had, and they doted on me. When I was 6, my grandpa passed away from cancer. This story takes place about 5 months after he passed away. This was I believe a Saturday and my dad was at work. My gram decided to take me to McDonald's for lunch and, like any 6-year-old, I was really excited. So we go to the McDonald's that was about 1.5 miles from our house, order our lunch, and sit down at a table to eat. At the time we were the only ones eating inside. About 10 minutes after we sit down, a scraggly looking man walks in, orders a meal, and sits down at the table diagonally in front of us to the left. The area we lived in was middle and upper middle class, so this guy looked pretty out of place. Gram had her back to him but I could see him perfectly. This man was at least in his mid-50s, with really wiry, scraggy and dirty white hair and beard. He had on blue shorts and a white t-shirt, also kinda dirty, and sandals. It's amazing. This happened 21 years ago and I can remember it like it was yesterday. So, I noticed that, under the table, this man had something dark pink and wrinkly on his lap, and he kept glancing at me and rubbing it every few seconds. In kindergarten, we learned about stranger danger and good touch, bad touch and learned which parts of our body people weren't supposed to touch. It clicked in my 6-year-old head that this man was not supposed to have that out like that, nor doing what he was doing. I got really queasy and nervous. I didn't want to tell my gram right then and there because I thought the man would hurt us. If my dad had been there I would have said something because my dad was my hero and could take on anybody. Instead, I put my Happy Meal box in front of my face so my view of this guy would be blocked. I had about half of my food left but had lost my appetite. Graham asked me if I was full and I just nodded yes. I was, and still am, very petite, so not finishing a full meal was nothing new for me. She asked me if I wanted to go play in the play area before we left, but I just shook my head and quietly said I wanna go home. Graham cleared our table and we left. When we got home, I was still really nervous and I felt like I was going to throw up. Graham asked me what's the matter Munchkin, her pet name for me, and I started crying and told her about the man at the McDonald's and what I saw. My Graham didn't panic or freak or get hysterical. She just hugged me and said it's alright. Go on to your room and play and I'll take care of it. She wiped my tears, gave me a blueberry Kool-Aid burst, and told our dog, Patches, to go to my room with me, which he did. After I was out of earshot, Graham called the McDonald's and told them about the guy. He was still there. The manager told Graham he'd take care of it and call her back. An hour later, the manager calls back and tells Graham they called the police, who showed up in record time and arrested the guy. When the police told the man to stand up, his frank and beans were still hanging out of his shorts. The manager also told Graham that she could bring me back for a month's worth of coupons for free Happy Meals. I have another story about a weirdo that happened a few years later and this time my dad was there and believe me, what my dad did to him was not pretty, but that's a story for another time. Never flipping someone off in traffic again. This happened on Saturday. My girlfriend, Tess, my puppy, Jack, and I are all getting ready for a road trip. We're planning on meeting some friends at their house and then starting the trip from there. On our way to their house around 11 AM, a white car with all tinted windows cuts us off and brake checks us close enough that I had to slam the brakes and swerve to avoid an accident. In the immediate fury, I honked and flipped the driver off. I wish I hadn't done this. Immediately, the driver rolls down his window and waves his hand over. He slows down to go back to other lane so that our cars are parallel to one another. The driver is gesturing wildly and yelling at us while we continue driving down the avenue. I proceed to make gestures to calm down and then try to ignore him and continue driving. He continues driving right next to us. Eventually, I try speeding up, and he revs in front of me and tries brake checking me again. At this point, I swerve to the other lane and he again slows down to match my vehicle's speed. He is still gesturing and screaming while I try to ignore him. Suddenly, he reaches in his lap and I notice he is holding a glass bottle. He throws it and it shatters at the side of my vehicle. Tess is hysterical at this point and the pup had hidden under the passenger seat. I go into adrenaline mode and try turning into different streets as the chase ensues. He is following close behind when he throws another glass bottle that shatters against my back window. I tell Tess to call the police as we speed down a 2-lane street and up a hill. She calls 911 as I come to a stop at the light at the top of the hill. The guy chasing us slows down to a stop behind us. Suddenly, he hops out of his vehicle, and in my rearview mirror I see him reach back into his car and grab something and puts it into his shorts. He begins walking toward my side of the car as the car in front of me drives away. I note the duck out of there, slammed the gas and turned into the next avenue. Within a minute, he is caught back up to us as I am now on speaker with 911 explaining the situation and giving them details of his car and appearance. Tess is crying as we speed down a busy avenue, weaving in between cars at 20 above the speed limit. I'm updating the 911 lady with where we are and she tells me to drive to the station. At the next red light, he yells now audibly, "Do we have a problem? Don't ducking flip me off." I'm trying to gesture that we do not have any problem. He is still trying to get me to get out of the car. The light is still red and he again hops out of his vehicle. I again floor it through the red and he continues chasing as I make way toward the police station. We're now accelerating and brake checking each other as he tries to drive off the road. I make gestures that he should continue following, hoping to get him to the station. About a block from the police, we get stuck in a busy intersection. There are many cars around as he again walks up to my car. This time I'm boxed in and Tess is panicking. I'm looking for any escape options to no avail. The drivers around us notice and many put their windows up and lock their doors. He comes right up to my window, slaps it with his palm, and asks one more time if there was a problem. Is there a duckine problem? I again adamantly say no. The 911 lady tells me to not engage over the phone speaker. He says good. He gets back into his car and then speeds away. 20 minutes into this horrible car chase experience, we end up meeting with the cops and they say there was nothing they could do, even though I updated them with more details of his direction and where he was last. We calmed down and then continued our road trip. So yeah, guy in the white unmarked sedan. Let's not meet again. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.